This is episode 79 of the Gauntlet podcast. My name is Jason.
I'm Lowell.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Rich.
Okay, so I got a chance to play Pasión de Pasiónes, which is a game that I played at Metatopia. I was at Metatopia this weekend, and I played a number of games that are in different stages of playtest. Some of them very, very rough. Some of them near finished, like Zombie World. Like, I think you could sell that tomorrow. And one of those games I got to play, the highlight, really, one of the big highlights for me of the weekend was Pasión de Pasiónes. It is a game by Brandon Leon Gambetta, who's a member of our community, but who I didn't know super well until I met him this weekend. It's a game about telenovelas. That's the theme. Do you guys know what telenovelas are?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure.
Okay, yeah, like Spanish soap operas, right? So you are telling the story of the very next episode of a popular telenovela, okay? So it's designed as a one-shot. You kind of set up the session by discussing the various intrigues and plot twists from the immediately preceding episode, okay? So each character has like a set of questions, like one or two questions that you have to answer to kind of like build out like what happened in the last episode, okay? And from there, that's your whole story is kind of driven from that. It works really, really well. I found it to be a really like fun and sharp way of kind of setting up the game, right? So you kind of set up your session that way. Each player has selected, he calls them playbooks, but that might change because presently he has it kind of formulated as a PBTA thing. But one of the things we talked about was how the game may not need that, right? But anyway, we'll call them playbooks for now. Each of the playbooks is like one of the classic telenovela archetypes. Now, I grew up in a household, well, not grew up, but I summered with my grandmother who is Mexican American, and she watches novellas. And Brandon's spot on with the archetypes, okay? Like, it's stuff like, you know, the domineering matriarch, like the evil, you know, father of the family, the beautiful poor maid, right? That kind of thing. The wise grandmother. It's like the very, very classic novella archetypes. Each of the little playbooks has different elements that you use to, you know, you answer some questions and you kind of create the character, and they have a couple of like little special moves and that kind of thing. The coolest thing about the game, okay, so this is like the killer technology on this one, like really, really cool. The game revolves around this, I think the best way of describing it is a fan mail system, whereby you're not just playing your character, you're also playing a family, like a Latino family watching the show, okay? And so, yeah. So,
oh, man.
So like if I'm in a scene and you're in a scene, Steve, our characters, everybody else is watching for certain types of cues, like in our role play, and then they express themselves in certain ways as members of the family. And whenever they do that, we get a little mechanical cookie, right? So for example, there's a cowboy, okay, the caballero, right? Very, very classic novella thing. Very dreamy, sexy cowboy, right? And whenever the teenage daughter in the home viewing audience, like, secretly falls in love with him, then you get the little cookie, right? And anybody in the audience can be the teenage daughter in that moment, right? You just pipe in and say, you know, oh, right now in my heart of hearts, I'm thinking how beautiful Diego is, or whatever, right? That kind of thing.
Oh, God.
There's a playbook that's a pirate, because in novellas there's a really high number of pirates, like legit seafaring pirates, right?
Really?
That's a thing, no matter the set. Yeah, like no matter the setting, there's always a pirate. So whenever the pirate does something that causes the little boy in the viewing family to like jump up and cheer, right? Then you get then you get your thing. So anyway, it creates this really, really neat gameplay dynamic where whenever you're in the scene, you know what the audience is looking for, right? And so you play your character in that way. Like if you're the villain, you want to play it really hard so that you get these like gasps of horror from like from the mother who's watching, right? That kind of thing. But so here's the thing. Whenever you do get one of those appropriate reactions, you mark a little box. And as the first person to mark, to fill their box up, I think it's like 5 boxes on the track. They're called the plot twist track. As soon as you fill that up, you can now do your plot twist, okay? And each character has like a specific sort of plot twist guidelines that you can do. And that kind of like signals the end of the game, right? Because it's the end of the episode, right? So at the end of the episode, I've filled up my track, and now I can reveal my plot twist to be, I've arranged a marriage between two of the characters or whatever, like that kind of thing.
Right.
Or I secretly killed someone or whatever, right? Very, very fun. We had such a good time with it. It was just a blast. So his current build of the game is still pretty early, and he has it set up right now as a Powered by the Apocalypse thing, and it's got like basic moves and all that kind of stuff, but we didn't use any of that stuff. Like the gameplay is like totally driven by this fan mail mechanic. And that's like all we used. So I don't know what he's planning to do, but I think if he can kind of streamline out some of that sort of like PBTA stuff, which wasn't really doing much, and just really focus on that back and forth between the characters and the home viewing audience, that'd be really neat. Also, the game calls for commercials in the middle of certain scenes, which is
awesome.
Pretty great. So commercials,
Nice.
Which is pretty fun. Loads of fun. As I was playing it, I was reminded of the very first time I played The Final Girl, which is, about as high praise as I can give for a game, right? Very accessible, very like boisterous, very funny. It has kind of a quasi party game feel to it, like The Final Girl does. Really, really dug it.
I love a good frame story around my role-playing experience. So games like this and games like Committee for the Exploration of Mysteries and The Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen, they have a really solid excuse for two levels of fiction to be going on. I find that very fun. I especially love the inclusion of commercials. This game better get published because I really want to play it.
Yeah, it was neat. I follow Brandon on Twitter, and he was kind of posting about his playtest, and it seemed like, and I was in the room when other playtests of it were going on, and it seemed like just everybody was having a good time. Like that table was always laughing and cheering and just doing, like, clearly having a good time. So yeah, Pasión de Pasiónes is really great. I cannot wait to see where it goes. Totally worth looking out for. And Brandon's a super, super nice guy. I never met him in person before, and it was really fun to meet him. Pretty cool.
It sounds like it plays pretty hard on the telenovela. What if you've never seen that kind of thing and you don't really...
That's a great question. So at our table, we had about 6 players and Brandon, about 7 players in total because Brandon would play it as well. And about 4 or 5 of them didn't even know what the concept was when they sat down to it. They didn't know what a novella was. The playbooks do a great job of like informing the archetypes and the style of play, right? Like it's set up to where you get it pretty quickly. I mean, you get it pretty quickly. You instantly like pick up on the idea of like high drama, like very, very emotional, melodramatic, shallow, like really, really like goofy, shallow stories. That all comes through pretty well in the playbooks. He did a good job with that.
How long did that run?
The slot was only 2 hours. So.
Oh, okay. And fit in nicely.
Yeah, we set up, got it done. It plays pretty fast. He's still got a lot of stuff to figure out with it, but the core idea is really solid and it's there.
It's really cool.
Cool, and that's all I had to say about it. So let's move on to Steve. You got to play Masks, I guess.
Yes.
What is this? Masks?
What is this game of which you speak?
Okay, so we've talked about Masks a lot. And so I will keep this brief and just touch on a few points that I found interesting. So yeah, I got to play Masks recently at CheapCon, which I talked about last year, but it's a house convention basically at a friend's place. I'd played once before, and I played the Doomed playbook, and the Doomed playbook is basically what it sounds like. You are fated to die, more or less. And so I saw some interesting parallels between the character that I played and the Doomed in our game this time around. Namely, the Doomed has a nemesis. It's somebody who's out for you. It's your worst enemy. It's your Lex Luthor or your Joker or whatever. And I decided, I don't know why, but I decided my nemesis in the previous game I played was going to be my mother. Okay, weird thing, whatever. This game, the player playing the Doomed, same thing, picked her mother to be her nemesis, which I thought was I don't know. That's a strange thing to become a thing, right?
Freudian.
Well, I will jump in to say that I played with a Doomed and they didn't have anything to do with their mother, so it's just you guys.
I figured. I don't know. I mean, 100% of my experiences with a Doomed, though, Rich. So it's hard to argue with that kind of numbers.
That's a good point.
100%. But the player this time around who's Doomed was, haunted by her mother. her mother hated her because she basically blamed her for ruining her life. And I really love a game where you have powers and relationships and, struggles that operate on a metaphorical level like that. Like they are superheroes and villains, and it's representing the person that is like having this baby ruin my life. Like that. And it's the level. It's the level in which
a totally different view of your dooms now.
It's the level in which like Monster Hearts operates, right? It's like I have this raging beast inside of me, and it's it's puberty or whatever. But in the game, you're a werewolf. I love when a game functions like that. I think partly because I don't natively operate on that level. I don't have a very metaphorical mind, so sort of dwelling in that space is kind of fun. But one thing that I really, really like and really appreciate about Masks, and I don't think I've mentioned this before. I intended to mention it previously when I talked about Urban Shadows, because both games share this in common, is when you're creating your character, when you're going through your playbook and filling things out, there is a race field. So you can be like, here we go, I'm Eastern Asian, or I'm black, I'm Middle Eastern, whatever. And so you can totally still play a white dude. But now, because of that tiny little line with a few options, it's now a choice instead of a default. And I think that's really cool.
That's a Magpie thing, right? Seems like they include that in a lot of their games. I've noticed that. Yeah. Which I think it's great.
I really like it.
Do you find that having that option of playing like an East Indian character or an Asian character or, a Latino character, do you find that it makes you feel a little less sheepish about playing a character with a background like that? Like how do you feel as a white male? How do you feel about that? Like, does that make sense?
Yes, I understand what you're asking, and the answer is yes. I do try and branch out, but I think this is just like all I got to do is check a thing. Here, you guys, it's right on the paper. It's cool if I'm Thai now. Hold on, let me grab my Story Games name book project, whatever, and look up Thai names. And that's kind of how that went. Yeah.
Yeah. I tend to play women when I play games. Like, I would say, gosh, 3/4 of the time when I'm a player in a game, I'm playing a woman. And I'm always just a little bit, in the back of my mind, like conscious of what is my maleness going to, like, what stupid thing am I going to bring to this role because I'm a man, right, and not a woman.
That's for me, that's Kagematsu. Burned that into my head.
I love that game. Oh, God, I love that game.
Well, I used to have that same kind of trouble with orcs, but I just realized that, if you try really hard, you can play a good orc.
Good job, Rich.
Thanks.
No, but I think it's cool. I love that they have that on the sheet, because I think it doesn't just encourage sort of like diverse characters at the table, but I think it also like creates like a space where you kind of have permission to, kind of explore those kinds of angles about your character without it necessarily feeling like appropriative or something, So.
Right. Oh, also, I just wanted to mention, I played I forget what they call it, but it's the sidekick archetype playbook, basically. I was the Robin.
The protege?
In Masks, and I went sort of full Robin. I had a Batman equivalent who is very, you pick a power that you share, and that was investigative skills. And then you pick something that the mentor has that you don't. And I was like, I don't want it to actually just straight up be Batman. So I'm like, there we go. Telepathic. He's Batman, but he knows what you're thinking. Anyway, that's creepy enough.
Oh, that's horrible.
Oh, man.
And, so I was playing a female character, and she's an attractive young woman. And then my Batman analog dude would just be like, what those boys are thinking about you. Just like mentally to me. Just wanted a creepy Batman.
That's nice. Yeah, you were like you would be like the best investigator ever if you're like, you could read minds.
It's just cheating.
Yeah. It reminds me of that. Remember that 3 Forged game you guys played where you were like psychic detectives? And
oh, right. You mean the one entitled Psychic Detectives?
Right. Yeah. And the game was, I don't remember who wrote it, but like the game was super easy because you were psychic detectives. like they didn't account for the fact that, I'm psychic. I know that.
Right.
Anyway, cool. Is there anything else you want to say about Masks?
No, that's all.
All right. Awesome. Rich, oh man, tell me about Five Fires. I've been kind of hearing the chatter on this on Slack a little bit.
Yeah, Five Fires is an RPG that Quinn Murphy has had in beta for a while now. I heard about it, and I was lucky enough to be able to get him on as a guest for a Dr. Tom the Frog episode, and he talked about it there. Really enjoyed it. It's about art and creativity, but it's through the expression of hip hop, right? So your character, there are kind of playbooks. You can be an MC, which is a rapper, or a DJ, which is a person who's on the turntables making the music, or a breakdancer known as a b-boy or a b-girl, or a graffiti writer. And it's really about making your art and solving problems. Like, those are the focus of the scenes that you have.
Oh, that's super unique. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice because it kind of flips, like, there are no rules for combat. You know, I mean, there are conflict rules that you could apply that way if you wanted to.
So you're saying the game's incomplete. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, it's in beta, so I'm sure that, a third the size of the entire book chapter on combat is coming.
But it won't sell.
at its current build, it doesn't have that. The play structure is interesting because it's in rounds. So you go around and each player decides whether they want to pursue their art or solve a problem, because part of character creation is you come up with a big problem and a small problem. And the big problem, the small problem is really freeform. There's some suggestions in there, but some of the big problems are like, my parents are disappointed in me and I want to impress them, was one that we had. Another one is I've busted up my ankle and I need to get enough money to be able to fix it. So those are the big problems. And so you will say, okay, I want to pursue that problem. And then you'll set up a scene along those lines and determine if your crew is with you, because the other player characters are assumed to be part of your crew. And then you tackle it. The MC, the GM, is known as the opposition. And once you define that scene type, you go in and you build your die pool at the front of the scene. You talk about, the player will say, okay, I want to solve this. Like, if they're trying to solve a problem. By the way, we played one session so far. We have a second session coming up. So I'm speaking specifically about character creation, which I want to talk about in just a minute. Character creation, neighborhood creation, which helps to build your city. And then of the two scene types, we got problem solve is what we tackled. And then we're definitely going to do some making of the art in the next session.
Cool.
So once you say, okay, I want to solve this problem, then you kind of Mad Lib it a little bit. You say, okay, I want to solve this problem by doing so-and-so. And then the opposition will set up, but you've got to worry about this. And there's this one thing about Five Fires that I'm not used to in story games, and it's secrets.
Oh.
It's cooler than you think, right? It's not the secrets of like, oh Lord, let's go off into the other room while all the other players do their thing. Yeah. In character creation, you create a secret, and it's something that nobody else knows about your character. Then, after you do that, you of course share it with the opposition, and then you define who your best friend is, and your best friend knows your secret. But that secret is powerful because at any point you can reveal that secret, and it gives you a bonus for the scene in which you unveil that secret.
That's pretty cool. I like the idea of like you having like a best friend who knows the secret. That's pretty dope. I like that.
Yeah, I like it a lot. The other thing that was kind of secretive is that when you're talking about those problems, and when you come into the conflict that the opposition sets up, the player defines what's your approach. Now, you've got a best approach and a second approach, and they're just a certain number of those approaches. Like you can go all in, which is balls to the wall action, no retreat, no surrender. You're either going to win big or you're going to fail big. You can go cautious, which of course is the flip side of all in. Or you can analyze, which is where you're trying to understand the problem before you go into it. And cautious and analyze are defined a little bit better in the text than I'm glossing over here. But you have a first approach and a second approach. And then when the opposition sets it up, they're supposed to write down which is the best approach to solve that problem.
Okay.
And they write it down, and then the player says, I'm going to go with this. And then you compare the two, and then if you've chosen the right approach, then you get a bonus. And if you've chosen the wrong approach, then you're going to get a minus to your dice. So you can play to your... it's interesting, and it played pretty well. It was the guide to the opposition is don't just pick the worst approach to be what they're good at, because that's mean.
Right, yeah.
The opposition chooses not only the best approach, but the worst possible approach. And so then you compare what they say they're doing against what you said is best or worst, and then that either gives or takes away some dice.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
And then you build your total die pool, and you roll against each other. Now, this part is really neat. There are 3 possible outcomes, and the opposition will place those dice that they've rolled, 3 of the total dice that they roll. You place it into, you have a playmat. The GM has a playmat, guys. Sorry, that makes me excited. And the 3 possible results are triumph, stress, or trouble. So triumph means you out and out win. And if the player chooses to put their high die against your triumph and they meet or beat that, then they've won the conflict. There's stress, which is you can take stress and it can actually affect you in some pretty negative ways. It's like, your hit points, emotional, physical hit points. And then the third is trouble. And what trouble does is if the opposition has more in trouble than you commit your die to, that doesn't affect your triumph here, but it gives the opposition future dice. So it's a really cool thing that the opposition, you can kind of early on, you can load everything into trouble. They win. But later on, when you bring in the big conflict, you've got a ton of dice and you're just going to slam them hard.
Okay. All right.
So there's some neat little strategy in there, and it was different, and it was kind of fun to have that. I rolled like crap, so a lot of my strategy went away, but in my head, it seemed like it was going to be great.
It worked out great.
So what I loved about Five Fires is, of course, I'm a big fan of hip-hop. When I was in high school, the way I differentiated myself was I had, and this is how old I am, I had lots and lots of cassette tapes of hip-hop music. And I, from Kid and Play to Salt and Pepper to all up and down the line of what is now kind of underground hip hop. I never really got into this style of gangster rap, although I was a huge fan of Public Enemy. Like, they blew my mind because I'm like from East Tennessee and I did not know these problems existed. Even though I was part of the problem, I just didn't even realize it. So
I'm a huge fan of Flavor of Love. So
there you go. That's not at all related, other than the same character.
Basically, have something in common there. Yeah.
Yep, there we go. The neighborhood creation process in Five Fires was really cool. It's supposed to be kind of like Fiasco. You roll a bunch of dice and then you assign out those dice to give tags to different neighborhoods, building up aspects of what's their wealth level, what's their crime level, what's their culture level. Now, because I was slotting this into Gauntlet City where everybody already had defined neighborhoods, because I was lucky enough, I had some superstars who came in and said, yeah, let's give this Five Fires a star. I didn't have Lowell, but I had a lot of other superstars in with me. And they already had their neighborhood. So we actually used the mechanics of Five Fires to flesh out their neighborhoods. And that was so cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and Jason Cox was one of the players. He's been in a ton of Gauntlet City games. So he already had a really good feel.
Good player.
Oh God, Jason's
like good.
Just aces. He's like a Cheese Whiz player. He's that kind of thing. You can add Cheese Whiz to anything. It makes it a little bit better.
Yeah.
That's Jason. He's totally
I like having those
Whiz.
ace players at the table though, because it forces me to up my game.
True.
So I always like that.
Yeah, and I have Fraser Simons too. So it was all aces.
Yeah, that's a good group. Yeah.
Yeah, and River jumped in at the end, and so I had 3 amazing players. So the neighborhoods got fleshed out in very interesting ways. The overall fact that they're a crew and they're working together, like after a whole lot of PBTA, it's just refreshing to play a group of people who have tough problems, but they're a crew. They're friends more or less. And then there are some rules that we may not get to, but they're rules around not only solving problems, but improving your community. It's about building up that neighborhood, trying to solve those problems as well. And there are even stats for your community and your conscience. And I just thought that was really
that's
really
pretty cool. Yeah. It sounds like in 2 sessions you guys may not be able to get to some of that stuff, but which is about
We're not. But I got enough of a taste to where I got over my, kind of stage fright of, can I do this right? Am I going to be authentic enough? And I just, luckily, Quinn Murphy's very cool and he's very open and engaged. And so I just gave it a shot and it was well worth the effort. It was super good.
So I'll kind of throw your question back at you, Rich, that you had for me. How much does your knowledge of hip hop and stuff, how does that matter, to playing the game?
No, there's like one page for each of the kind of character types that go over your art. And that's really, like, you can step in, read through that. That's all I shared with the other players, even though the beta's, free to download and check out.
Because the closest I ever got to being a fan of hip hop in school was Color Me Bad, and I don't think that counts.
Oh my God.
You could totally pull this off.
I'm joking.
You could totally pull this off. I mean, I'm from Hick, Tennessee. I know nothing about inner city life, but I think that the game does a great job. Like, one of the things that we didn't talk about, but you start off the game and you actually will roll your wealth. Like, you can have a wealth stat and you roll that, and if you fail, then you're strapped for the game and you can't use wealth in any of your rolls going forward. Like, you didn't make any money. And so you gotta solve that problem too. So I think it does a good job of emulating that in a handholdy way. So you don't have to come in knowing anything about like the art of hip hop per se. I think that you're going to get enough from the text that describes your particular kind of playbook or class or whatever.
Cool. Steve or Lowell, do you guys have anything you want to?
Sorry. Yeah. So this is a game that is very much about hip hop and the creation of art. Is there any? I guess. Is there any art creation on the player's side? Are you representing this by drawing a doodle of here's what my tag looks like, or are you making up rhymes or anything? Is there any of that in there?
So that's a great question, because that was one of the concerns I had when I was first talking to Quinn about the game, and then I rolled some of those questions in for Dr. Tom to pull it out of him. You don't have to actually write any rhymes. However, when you create art, you do talk about, what are your lyrics about? And so you can really conceptually talk about those things, but you don't have to just sit down and write 4 or 5 couplets in a row. That's not what it's about, right?
Yeah, okay. That's still pretty cool.
You come up with like images and phrases that you want to communicate to the audience. And so you can do it in more broad, abstract ways of almost like, to me, when I read it, it's like, oh, this is how maybe a critic would talk about what this hip hop artist brings to the table, or what this DJ does with their music to communicate their art. And I thought that was a really smart way of abstracting it so that you don't have to actually go through that sweat equity of like literally doing the thing.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That sounds cool.
And now I have an idea for a hack of Warrior Poet, where you, instead of writing haiku, you write sweet rhymes. I don't know. Like fresh rhymes. I don't have anything else. Sorry. I did say dope earlier though. But that's because I use that word regularly in my life. So
you do say I will legitimize that you use dope as part of your vernacular.
Kendrick Lamar's next album is called Sweet Rhymes, though. So you're in good company.
Awesome.
That is a lie.
Wait. That's a lie. God damn it.
So there's only one aspect of Five Fires that I need a little bit more time with, and I want to hit it pretty hard in the next time that we play. And it's that thing I described before, where you roll at the top of the scene, and then the fallout of the results of that roll are how you're supposed to play it out, right? So it all happens at the front, and that the scenes are supposed to be really quick. Like, the example of play is, hey, we talk about this thing I want to do. Okay, here's your problem. Roll your dice. Oh, it sounds like you had this, this, and this. All right, let's play it out real quick. And there's just like 3 lines of dialogue and move on.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, it's like rapid fire.
That kind of feels right, though.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not genuine. It's just a very different play style from what I'm used to. Like,
that makes sense. Yeah, I found that to be the case with Hot Guys Making Out. Right, those are like really, really brief little bursts of story. And you're kind of just going around the table. That can be really rewarding, though. It's a creative constraint that I find enjoyable. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to giving it a really honest shot, 2 solid hours of let's just see how many of these scenes we can go through, because I want to solve some of these problems. I want to see some art scenes. I want to really push as much of the system as I can, knowing that there are aspects of this that we're not going to get to, but to get as much as possible. I had a great time, and the play group all had a good time too. It's a good solid game. I want to get some more of it to the table.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say about 5, Vyaz?
I not at this time, but I may talk about it again soon.
All right, Lowell. So I gather you started up Worlds in Peril for TGI Thursday, right?
Yeah, so I did 2 sessions of that, which is what I've been trying to do, is just 2 sessions to try things out.
Oh, you've already done it. You've already finished it up. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we actually did both already because we had the Halloween break, so we're catching up on that. Yeah. The sessions are recorded, and we'll have those posted. It was a good group, though I had Fraser Simons, who is the designer's brother.
I was wondering about that. How'd that affect how you ran it?
I don't think it did, because he's so much fun to play with. Any intimidation I had went out the window pretty fast. I had read this before it was published and wasn't sure about it, and I backed it on Kickstarter, and I've played it a couple of sessions with another GM, like maybe a year and a half ago. I went into this my first time running it. So it's superhero PBTA, and it's very different from Masks. It goes for big picture generic superheroes. It's not about relationships. It's much more like not Young Justice or X-Men, more Avengers.
Right.
Like, here's a superhero group. They have some tensions. They fix some things in between fights. So much less on the social side. There are playbooks in there that sort of define your origin and your motivation. But in play, those didn't really matter. Instead, you're just making up a character with stats and powers. Here's the interesting thing about it is, and the big thing is that powers are purely fictional justification.
Okay.
There's absolutely no power list. There's absolutely no things here you can pick from these things at all. There's no sets. There's some examples, but what it is you say, okay, my character can do this thing very easily. It's a simple action. Can do this thing more difficult. This thing's borderline for me. This thing I could do possibly, and this thing is impossible for me. And you have to come up with those based on your power set. So you really do kind of have to know superhero tropes and have some knowledge. So there is a chunk of pressure on the players there on that front end, which means I'm not sure how I would do that at the table, but we did pre-gens in any case. Those categories only matter in that they define if you go to push and do something new that's not on your power list, then you can roll, and depending on what level the power sort of related to it was, you can take an effect from that. And maybe you get a new power, and then you write it on your sheet, and then you can do it from then on.
Like the Warren almost, in a way. Or,
yeah, actually, but even a little bit looser. It's a neat thing. We've used a variant of it for an alchemy game that Sherry and I have played, and it worked well there. It's also another game that uses conditions as damage. We saw that in City of Mist, but even more open.
When you say open, do you mean like more abstract, or what do you mean by that?
I'm going to say unfettered.
Okay.
And I'll come back to that.
It's a good adjective, unfettered, yeah.
Yeah. So I really love superhero games, and I like that this is a real honest focus on classic superheroes. If you were to bring somebody who had played Champions or V&V or Mutants and Masterminds and say, hey, this is just like that, but we're using some of the PBTA tech, it does that. And it's got kind of a neat set of basic moves. The basic moves feel very complete. They feel like they do the kinds of things that you would do in play. And when I had things that sort of felt like fringe elements, they were very easy to kind of lock them into what the moves were. It's got a bond system that's very mechanical in that you set bonds with a numerical value, and you get a bunch of them at the start, and you burn them, and they raise your success level, and that causes a problem with them, and then you have to go and fix it in between sessions. So that's a resource. It's interesting. The different character creation levels actually you can have actually a ton of bonds, but it's an interesting system. It's very easy to grok and very easy to use, and the players kind of enjoyed playing with that.
So you were saying that you're supposed to, like, your bonds sort of get used up, and that causes a problem in the relationship. Did you say that you fix that between sessions?
Well, not between sessions. In the sort of the downtime between adventures, or the downtime between sort of big scenes, you would go and do this move called fit in to restore a bond, and that can cause problems with the particular person or institution, and you kind of play that out.
Okay.
So that's how that goes. Sessions you're right, is not the right way to put that.
Gotcha. So you said you're going to have bonds with an institution, like I could have a bond with, U.S. government or something like that. And
the
that could
Serpent Society.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Seem okay with that? Okay, sorry.
Yes, absolutely.
No, I thought you were just making that up.
No, that's a real thing.
No. It's actually on everybody's sheet. The baseline bonds that you have are the city and law enforcement. Everybody starts with those at least a 1. And then you get some more. And usually you'll have some with the other player characters. And sometimes you'll have it with your NPCs or whatever. So let me give you an example of when we went to burn a bond. Fraser had to burn a bond in the first session, and it was a bond with the city. The sort of fictional justification was that people were filming the fight, and they kind of uploaded some of his bad moments from the fight, or him destroying property during the fight, and that was essentially burning that bond with the city, and you have to restore his reputation then.
Okay. Well, that seems cool. Yeah. I mean...
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's a little harder with players from my point of view, but actually in the second session, everybody was really working with that well. Like, they were saying, okay, now I'm burning the bond because I'm pushing him out of the way so that I can get to this. I've lost my patience with him, so my bond is burned with them. And so that was kind of neat. So now what I'm less sure about with this game, and I want to start out by saying I like this game. I think it does some really interesting things. I'm not sure it's the game for me. One of the weird things is, before both sessions the night before, I had run Mutants and Masterminds 3rd edition, with Roll20, with maps and charts and all that. So there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance there. The conditions are really loose. I mentioned them being unfettered. You can kind of do anything, and there are levels of them, and bad guys have condition thresholds. Like, a standard bad guy might take 2 conditions for every player. So if you've got a 5-player group, they have to take 10 conditions before they get taken out.
Whoa.
That seems like a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you could checkbox. I mean, one of the things is that we've got other games that use the same technology. City of Mist has conditions, and then they actually have numerical build-up levels. And then, of course, Masks has a really set checklist of conditions. This is very, very open, and that freedom, and there's a lot of freedom in this game, that freedom puts a lot of weight on the players and on the GM, I think. And so I'm really uncertain about that.
I can see that, because I'll tell you what, when I play Monster Hearts, one of the things I dread in Monster Hearts whenever it happens is you get the role where someone gets to put a condition on someone else, because it seems like there's always like a conversation that ensues about, well, what should it be? How should I write it? That stuff's not as easy to do as you might think. I find it can be a little tricky.
Particularly because there's a lot of very generic rules that sometimes people will get conditions, and conditions means that they can't do certain things. Or sometimes bad guys will have these things that they can do, and it means that they don't have to take certain kinds of conditions. You have to decide. That's on you as a GM. It effectively means that there's a lot of aspects to track, and I mean that in the Fate sense.
Yeah.
It is generic. A lot of the color is on the players. Rather than having moves that are really to the specific subgenre, they're open, and so when you go to take somebody down, you've got to think about how you frame that really well, to get it to fit with your fiction and to get it to work. And so I felt uncomfortable when I was running it. I didn't feel good about my running. And I said that to Sherry, because Sherry said in the second session, And she said, Jesus, we had a great time. We enjoyed it.
I heard it was great.
this-
The players who I talked to who were in the game, they said they really liked it. So
Yeah. I gave her character sheet like 20 minutes before the game, and it was a shape changer, and it had all this weird sort of fictional stuff. And she sat down and she was like, okay, I'm just going to be these three things. I can do a skunk. I can do a bat. I can do a gorilla. And she went with it and she had a good time. It helped that her and Fraser also rolled, I would say 90% 10 plus on 2d6.
they got to be badasses the whole time.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
As opposed to Chris Mead, who couldn't roll above a 3. I felt really bad. There is a lot of tech that the players need to know. There's a lot of things that players need to know to make informed decisions about what they can do. There's a lot they need to know to make it effective. So that's hard. And because it simulates classic superhero games, fights take a while.
Oh, okay.
Fights are not easy. I'll give you one example, and I may be kind of off on this. In the book, he gives an example of a minion group, mooks. And this minion group is 5 groups of 10 dudes, okay? So we've got 50, right? One of the options on the takedown move is reduce a mook's group's value by 2. So if you get a 10 plus, you can take down 6 people and take harm. So that could be a while if you've got that plus some other opposition. And in that case, I don't know yet how to tune that. I don't know if that's a standalone thing or what. And I feel like I need a little more guidance.
When I run Dungeon World, I occasionally have encounters in Dungeon World where the characters are just surrounded by fuck tons of goblins or whatever, right? Like just so many fucking things. And I take it out of hack and slash altogether. I really do. I abstract the shit out of it. And it, basically everybody gets a sort of defy danger or maybe it's a custom move or something, right? But I find that to be super satisfying and it's quick. I'm curious about that aspect of it.
Yeah, and here I'm going to say this as well. Part of the problem may be that I had a very hard time grokking these rules. Part of the problem was it was actually the first PBTA game that I ever read, and I didn't get it then. And as I've played other Apocalypse World games, I've kind of picked up how this functions. But there's a lot of text in this rules book. It's really dense.
Okay.
So I feel like I haven't got the whole rules. I don't feel like I've got that under my belt, and I want to give it another read through because it is so dense. I mean, it feels like PBTA Champions. There's a lot of rules. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of explanations. There's a lot of walls of text in it. But even if it doesn't click with my style, I want to go back and try it and see what I can do. Because I would like a superheroes game that I could pick up and have it feel PBTA and have people just go, okay, here's my fictional powers, and we run with it. I think that's great. And I'd like to see more of that. So
yeah, I'm going to run it in the new year because my very first role-playing game was Marvel Superheroes, right? And I played the shit out of Marvel Superheroes when I was young. Like, I played a bunch of that game. And I have a soft spot for just, like, straight up blow up buildings and, Spider-Man trying to take down Juggernaut style, like comic book action, I don't read comic books anymore, but when I did, I enjoyed the action. Like I liked the issues that were just all action, right? Like I was really into that. So yeah, I'm going to give it a shot. I read the text about a year ago in preparation for running it and then I ended up not running it, but that reads like this idea that it is pretty dense. It's got a lot of little things going on, but I remember thinking at the time, like, yeah, I can run this. It's got a few little bells and whistles that don't seem totally necessary, but, I'm going to give it a go, I think, for sure.
Yeah. I'm wondering if my running other superhero games and having that up in my head, Champions and Mutants and Masterminds, if that's kind of getting in my way, because it is going to that sort of a little more dense combat. And then my head says, well, if we're going to go dense combat, we really need to be doing initiative and have a hex grid and, measuring distance.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
So I suspect that that's on me. I like it. I'm glad I bought it. I have a nice hardcover, and it's a beautiful book.
The book is beautiful. Yeah, the book is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Lowell, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I'm good.
All right, let's go to the next segment. Listeners, this episode of the Gauntlet Podcast is being sponsored by our friends at Nocturnal Media. Now, on the last episode of the Gauntlet Podcast, we discussed Nocturnal's Kickstarter for their game Upwind, which is a sort of Sky Pirates meets Studio Ghibli sort of narrative-driven game. That Kickstarter's ended. However, I've just learned that Nocturnal has released a Quickstart on drive-thru. Now, this Quickstart is completely free, and it includes sort of a rules primer, like a sort of condensed version of the rules, I guess, for the game, and a complete introductory adventure. So that's pretty awesome. So if you think this is a game you might be interested in, this free Quickstart is a really good way of checking it out. We'll include a link in the show notes. Thanks again to Nocturnal. It's giving me life. I was really bummed out when Anna Kreider decided to stop writing her blog, Go Make Me a Sandwich. It really bummed me the fuck out. I'm not going to get into the reasons why. Her reasons were valid, and I totally support them. But nevertheless, I felt like her voice was a really, really important one in the hobby. The Gauntlet does not, as sort of like our coverage areas or whatever, we don't really get too involved in sort of like the meta conversations about the hobby, right? Like, and particularly, you know, the conversations related around like, you know, safe spaces in gaming and feminism and that kind of thing, right? But it doesn't mean I don't think those things are important. I do think they're important. And so I was a big fan of her blog and I was really bummed out. So I got turned on to Kate Bullock's blog, which is I'm getting a thumbs up from Lowell there.
Absolutely.
I got turned on to Kate Bullock's blog, which is called Bluestocking's Organic Games, and we'll have a link in the show notes. So I've been reading that pretty steadily. She's a good writer. In addition to like, you know, having those sort of like meta conversations about the hobby, she also does these really, really quite in-depth reviews of games that I actually give a shit about. So, which is a pretty rare thing on gaming vlogs. So like often you see reviews of games that like I just, you know, most of the review space in the internet is for games I don't care about. So anyway,
damn Lowell, sick burn.
Yeah, I know. Holy cow.
I didn't say all of them.
Just all the bird themed ones.
Anyway, so I've been digging her blog. And so anyway, I got a chance to play with her in a couple sessions over at Metatopia. We were in the Zombie World game together, and she's just a really cool person. I just really clicked with her like almost immediately. Like every now and then in like gaming space, like I just click with someone. I'm like, oh man, I totally get how you play. You get how I play. I can tell we're on the same level here. And that was pretty dope. I mean, I think like the last person or the person who comes to mind that I can think of, you know, who I've had that kind of connection with like almost right away was Dan. And so that was pretty cool. And I actually didn't realize who she was until after the first session. I kind of glanced at her name badge and I was like, oh, okay. So it was all starting to come together. So anyway, she's pretty awesome. I would love to get her involved in some Gauntlet stuff next year in the new year. I don't know what that would look like, but it'd be pretty neat if she got involved somehow because frankly, we have a very, very pathetic presence of women in terms of women's voices in the Gauntlet, and something I'm not happy about and something that I'd love to see change in the new year. But yeah, listeners, go check out her blog, Bluestocking's Organic Games. And if you like it, go give her a buck on Patreon too. Rich, what's giving you life?
What's giving me life? I'm going to call an audible. Young Justice got his third season.
I knew you were going to.
Yes.
As soon as on the Slack, I was like, oh, he's going to change his giving me life to that. I can already tell.
Yeah, I got to call an audible because there's a thing that gave me life for sure. And maybe I'll talk about that at a future time. But really, Young Justice, one of my favorite TV shows, probably my favorite superhero themed TV show I've ever seen. They just announced, DC Animated announced that they're getting the same production team up to do a third season. It's going to be amazing. I loved first season. I love it a lot. I really, really enjoyed second season. I love the complex storytelling. There's a brand new podcast, by the way, called Whelmed, which if you have seen Young Justice, you'll get the joke that is on the third episode and I strongly recommend it. It's pretty cool, and so that is what's giving me life, is the whole Young Justice vibe, man.
Sweet.
Neat.
Cool.
Lol, what's giving you life?
Last week, Misha B posted a link to an article that's on Tor, the publisher's blog, and it's called "Ginny Weasley is Not Impressed," and and it's in a Women of Harry Potter series. I think she's done Hermione as well. It is so good. It talks about just how strong she is. It talks about, she had 6 brothers. She gets ignored. She's done all these things. It goes back and looks at her role in it and how she doesn't take shit. And she's the only one who actually interacts with young Tom Riddle, and she gets betrayed by him in that second book. And there's all that stuff that kind of gets ignored later. And it talks about her coming to terms with that. It's so good. I love that kind of, let's look at a character and show you just how cool they really are. Super, super fun. Loved it.
Awesome. Cool. Steve, what's giving you life?
What's giving me life this week is dystopian Sylvester Stallone. So
okay.
I watch
what?
Just this week?
Well, today I watched Judge Dredd.
I watched that last night.
Recently.
Literally watched that last night, Steve.
That's great. That's great.
It's good.
And a couple weeks ago, watched Demolition Man, which I actually hadn't seen before.
What?
I saw Judge Dredd. I know. I saw Judge Dredd in the theater, of course. But I watch terrible movies for fun. And I think I sort of avoided Demolition Man because I was, just like by coincidence the first time around when I started getting into bad movies, out of the fear that it would sort of fall into that middle ground where it's not bad enough to laugh at and is not good enough to justify watching. But I think I'm finding that Sylvester Stallone, he's just enjoyable enough to watch when he's yelling, "I am the law," or, whatever, because of course he's yelling. He's just enjoyable enough to watch to justify buying in for, an hour and 45 minutes or whatever, while you try and find the terrible in it. Especially Demolition Man. It's not a great movie, but it's an enjoyable one, and has this really solid running joke throughout the movie where, people exist in this. It's a future where there are like these morality laws. And so there are these little morality monitor machines on all the walls. And so whenever you curse, someone will curse in the movie. And, you so-and-so, you are being fined $1 for violation of the morality statute. And, and it's focused on at first to bring your attention to it. And then an hour later in the movie, someone will be yelling curse words in the foreground, and then very quietly in the background, if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. You are being fined 1 credit for violation of the morality laws. And it's just really, really solid. Fun times, terrible movies. I'm enjoying it.
Awesome. Well, listeners, that's our show. If you would like to get in touch with us, I recommend going to our website, gauntlet-rpg.com. We are also on Twitter at GauntletRPG. And if you enjoy our shows and the other things we do, please consider giving us a pledge on Patreon. We are at patreon.com/gauntlet. Right now on Patreon, for a $4 pledge, you can get a copy of Codex Ectoplasm, which is the newest issue of our zine Codex. It features a Monster of the Week mystery called Huge Problems in Little Shanghai, a playbook for the Sprawl called The Ghost, 13 haunted magic items for Dungeon World, plus a little miscellany that covers signs of ghostly habitation. It's really, really creepy and good. 9 pieces of original art, beautiful layout. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous issue. So go check that out. And I think that's all I've got. Steve, I'm led to believe we can't find you anywhere. So I will just say thank you for your contributions.
I cannot be found. You are welcome.
Okay. Rich, where can we find you?
Orclord with a K on Twitter.
Thank you for your contributions.
Thank you.
And Lowell.
I blog at Age of Ravens, and you can find me at EDIGE23 at Twitter or G+.
And thank you for your mighty contributions.
Why, thank you.
Listeners, that's it. Thank you for listening. Take care. This is episode 79 of the Gauntlet Podcast. My name is Jason.
I'm Lowell.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Rudd. And I'm Rich. Wow. I thought you were the rusty one, Jason. Wow.
Right out of the gate.
Hey, Rich, buddy, you just got your name wrong.
I got my name wrong. Yeah, name fail.
That's
hashtag
not good.
Name fail, hashtag blessed. Yeah.